All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, you can post them below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. Trying to bring up my questions here. Bear with me. I'm trying to get the page to load here. I'm not sure what's going on here. It won't load the page. Sorry, it's still just spinning. I'm trying to get the chat page to load so I can see what the questions are. Let me try. Try going to a different page here. Not sure what's going on, why it won't work. Let me try doing this. Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to get the chat page to load, but for some reason it just won't load. Try putting it up on my iPad, I suppose. Wondering if the site is down or something, because every time I try to pull it up, it just spins. It doesn't work. So I don't know what's going on. Sorry, folks. I don't know why it's not allowing me to pull up the page, but for some reason it's not. Try a different. Yeah, it's saying the page can't be reached. Let me try a different browser. See if I can get to it that way. Maybe it's my browser. Yeah, I think the site must be down. Let me see here. Well, there's not really, doesn't look like there's really anybody on here, so I'm guessing the site is down, or at least it is for most people. So I apologize if you're on here. But it looks like the site is down for at least some people, me being one of them. So I'm able to go on the YouTube live, but unfortunately, I'm not able to see what any of the questions are because that's on the website. So I'll stay on here for a little bit until until maybe it gets worked out. I'll keep refreshing it, but yeah, unfortunately, it looks like it's down. Hmm. So I just got confirmation that the site is down. All right, let me try this again. Dang. It's still down. It looks like maybe a couple people have hopped on here. Not sure how they've hopped on here, but the site is down. So unfortunately, I don't have a way to see the questions. They're being posted in the chat. So I apologize. Just waiting for the site to come back up. Then we'll start. Oh, here we go. I think it just came up. All right. All right. Site's back up now. All right. So Willis says, at what point do you pull the handle to create more speed? Right before or at or just after impact? I mean, you're pulling the handle down from the start of the downswing. So you're pulling the handle throughout the swing. If you're talking about, I think you may be talking about like when the handle starts to kind of move up. When that is when the hands are at the lowest point, right? So when we look at the better players, typically that's going to be right in here, right? So here, this is when the hands start moving up, right? And then the club works down into the ball, right? But from the top of the swing, right, when I'm up here, when I start my downswing, I'm starting to pull on the club, right? I'm pulling on the club here, and then my hands will reach the lowest point around in this area. Hands in front of the trail thigh, club parallel to the ground. That's where we see the better players. A lot of recreational golfers, I see they get to this point and the club's about right there. But the better players are typically going to be right in here, and then the hands move up as the club moves down. I assume that's what you're referring to. But yeah, you're pulling on the club all the way down. All right. We can start asking some questions now. Apologize for the delay. So yeah, go ahead and post your questions. Like I said, I'll stay on here till right at noon. I apologize for it not coming up, but yeah, if you guys got questions, go ahead and post them. In the meantime, I'll just be kind of working on some of my other stuff. If you're just jumping on here, I'm just waiting for some questions to be asked. I already answered Willis's question, so just waiting for more questions to be asked. All the other questions were from yesterday that you may be seeing in the chat. So we already answered those yesterday. So if you got any new questions, feel free to post them. We'll get them answered. In the meantime, like I said, I'll just be kind of working on some of my other office stuff I gotta do. So yeah. All right. Sounds like we're getting some questions coming in. All right, so we'll start here with Tom S says the face angle of my club is pointed left 5 to 7 degrees. When I open up the club, it's usually a push to the right. Could it be the ball position? Any ideas? Ball position does play, I would say, a small role in the club face angle at impact. But what I would be tinkering with to get the club face in the right position, the first thing I'd be tinkering with is the grip. So strengthening, weakening the grip. So strengthening the grip. If you want to get the face more close, so if you're leaving the face open, which you're doing the opposite, but let's say you're leaving the face open, a stronger grip. If you just make the exact same swing with a stronger grip, the face is going to be more close. So this is typically what I encourage people to do because it's usually a fairly instant result and is usually very easy to do. You just put your hands on the club in a little different manner. That's it. You just make the same swing from there. And then on the other side of that, if you're getting the face too closed, a weaker grip, right? So having your lead hand more, the back of your lead hand pointing more toward the target instead of kind of to the right? So that would be a weaker grip. This would be a stronger grip. So just kind of how your hands are on the grip. So that's what I would do first. I would just kind of just weaken the grip a little bit. That's what I would do first. The other thing that you can do is change your wrist angles, right? So if I hold the club like this and I cup my wrist, you can see how that opens up the club face. If I bow my wrist, that closes the club face. So if you're someone who's struggling with getting the club face to close through contact, you may want to feel like the back of your lead hand here is kind of pointing off to the right a little bit, right? You can see how my face is open when I do that, right? And if I'm leaving the face open, then I may want to feel like the back of my lead hand is kind of pointing down toward the ground, right? You can see when I do that, that closes the club face, right? So those are two feelings that I would mess around with to most influence the club face. Ball position can definitely make a difference. Like if the ball position's way back here, then my face is going to tend to be more open, right? If my ball position's more forward, it's going to tend to be more closed, right? But that's also going to change my path of my club, right? So when the ball position is more back here, I'm going to tend to swing more from the inside. When it's more forward, I'm going to tend to swing more outside, right? So I would try to stay more consistent with your ball position. Generally, for shots that are off the ground, we want to be just forward of the middle of the stance, right? So if this alignment stick, let's say this alignment stick is the middle of my stance here, right? So that's going right through equally between my toes. My ball position would be basically right about there, right where the ball is kind of on the back of the middle of the stance there, right? That's a good ball position for most people to have. Now, obviously, you may benefit. You may find that it's better for you to have it a little bit more back or a little bit more forward than that, but that's a good general place to start with that. So that's what I would do is I put it about in there and then change your grip, change your wrist angles to influence the face. Because like I said, if I put it back here, my path is going to tend to get more in down. My face is, or if I put it forward, my path is going to tend to get more out to in. So there's just more things that you have to change if you change the ball position. Whereas if you just change the grip and the wrist angles, that usually does it just mostly just influences the face. Excuse me. All right, let's keep going. I think I heard another couple questions. So Larry K says, how close should the hands come to the legs in the golf swing? Should be in the downswing. Yeah, they're going to come, within a few inches typically of the legs. With the driver, they're typically going to be farther away because it's a longer club and you're more upright. So with a driver, I may come in and I may have my hands, like a foot away from my legs. For an iron, I'm going to be closer, right? My hands are going to be coming in like right here, probably 5-6 inches away from my legs as I'm coming in, right? So if you find where your hands are like kind of coming in and they're very, very close to your legs, most likely is what's going on is you're early extending. So you're kind of going like this and the hips are kind of working forward and that club's getting too vertical, right? So if you find that you feel like all jammed up and you don't have a lot of space for your legs, try to get the feeling of really flexing your hips in the start of the downswing. Right, that's the opposite of extension. So flexion would be, if you think about it this way, it would be making the angle between my legs and my torso, making that angle smaller from the hips. Right, so I'm doing that from my hips. This would be hip flexion, and this would be hip extension. Right. So if I'm doing this at the very start of my downswing, right? So if I'm here and then I do that, I'm going to get all jammed up. My hands are going to be very close to my legs. You can hit the golf ball doing that. You're just not going to be as consistent. You're going to tend to early release the club. You're just going to tend to have, some consistency issues. Whereas, and also we just don't see any of the better players doing that. Whereas if I go up to the top and I do this move where I flex my hips, right? So from here, now I flex my hips. Now I have space here for my hands and everything to work through. And I'm also going to be closer. You've heard the term covering the ball, right? So that's kind of what this is where we're covering the ball. And that's going to allow you to get your hands more in front at impact and be able to compress it a little bit better. So I would try to flex your hips in the downswing if you feel like you're all jammed up. So Johnny C says, does the app that you use for the online lessons reviews work on both an Android and iPhones? Yes, there is both an Android and an Apple version. The Android version of the app doesn't have as many features as the Apple version of the app, but it does work on both. They actually just updated the Android version of the app. It used to be very limited. It used to be to where basically the Android app, you could basically just film your swing and you could draw lines on it and stuff. It was fairly limited, but they actually just updated the Android app and there's more things that you can do with it. Now it still doesn't have as many features as the Apple version. It works best, kind of on iPhone. So I'm an Android user myself. I have an Android phone, but I use my iPad. So that's another option. If you are an Android user, if you have an iPad, you can use it on an iPad. If you can also get like a used iPhone and just don't have a cell phone plan on it and just use the phone for the app. You can connect it to the Wi-Fi and stuff like that to send videos to the instructor and things like that. But it does work on Android. It's just not going to have as many features. So for example, the iPhone now not all iPhones have this. I think any iPhone in the last several years has this, but you can have it to where it auto detects your swing, right? So if you set it up, you won't have to like press record or anything. If you put it in auto detect, as long as you're kind of within the parameters on the phone, you just make a swing and it will record it. It will trim it perfectly, and it'll be good. It doesn't always do it perfectly. I have had a few issues, but obviously they're continuing to work out. That's the one thing I will say about OnForm is that they are continuously trying to improve it. They are constantly doing things. They're coming out with updates. It seems like every month or two they're improving some aspect. There's some sort of update that makes it better and better and better. Whereas previous ones that are companies that I've used for the swing reviews that shall remain nameless, they're not improving it. In fact, they're trying to fix what's wrong with it all the time. Whereas the app works on OnForm works really, really well, and they're just constantly making it better. So that's a plus with them. Excellent customer service. So I wouldn't, just because you may be an Android user, I'm an Android user as well. I don't let that deter me from using the app. I still use the app. And the other thing is that if you are, let's say, you could do kind of the same setup that I do. So you can do stuff on your Android phone. Even though it is more limited than the Apple device. But what you can do is you can get an iPad or try to pick up like a used iPhone, right? Because a lot of people get new phones every year, right? And then they sell their old one, and their old one is fine. They just want the newest and best thing. So a lot of times you can get a pretty decent deal on a used iPhone. And if you're only using it to video your swing, then it doesn't need to be the latest and greatest things. It just needs to be able to run the app, right? So what I have is an iPad. I have my Android phone. What I'll do is when I film my swing, I'll have one set up from down the line and one set up from face on. And now I'm able to get both angles at the same time. One of them has audio detect, the other one doesn't. So one of mine will have to press record, but it does have that. So it's nice to be able to get both camera angles at the same time, because sometimes you'll be working on something and it helps to have both angles, right? Because then you may look at it as like, okay, well, it looked good from over here, but the face on angle, was I doing what I was trying to do there? And you don't really know, right? So it's a little bit of a benefit if you kind of work it out that way. But yeah, highly recommend the OnForm app for sure. It's not even close, and it's the best app that I've used for analyzing swings and things like that. For coaching, it's there's nothing else that's better out there. I haven't used every single thing, but I've used several of them, and it's leaps and bounds above. So definitely recommend it. So RC says, what's the big difference for getting a pitching wedge with you set up? Hold on. What's the big difference for getting a pitching wedge with you set of clubs versus buying a Vokey wedge of the same loft? Are the set clubs easier to hit? They can be. Typically, it's more like the weighting of the club. So, for example, this is a Titleist AP2 wedge. This is more like a gap wedge, right? So if you look at this wedge, there's more perimeter weighting here, right? So there's more perimeter weighting around the edge. That makes it a little bit easier to hit. Whereas if you look at like a Vokey wedge, right? If you look at like a Vokey wedge, there's no perimeter weighting here, right? So you can see it's all kind of flat right here. So it makes it a little bit easier to hit those. And also, these are typically going to be less expensive. Like a Vokey wedge. What's a Vokey wedge nowadays? I haven't bought one in a long time. when I was buying them, they were like $120, but I think they're more than that now. I think I think I saw them at PGA Superstore and they were like 180 or something like that for one club. Whereas typically when you buy the club that matches the set, it's going to be it's going to be a little bit cheaper to get that club as a part of the set. So, but there are tour players that do both, right? That all their wedges are the style, like the Vokey style, or the whatever brand is the using. You can certainly do that, but it's generally more economical, and it's not going to make a huge difference. A lot of times, also the Vokey style, they're going to tend to be a little bit heavier than the standard club style, which isn't really necessary because you got to think about it. You're going to be taking mostly full swings with these clubs, right? So it's not always necessary to have that, but you certainly can. But it's usually going to be more economical to get the pitching wedge that comes with the set. Because if you think about it that way, like why wouldn't you just get your 9-iron that way? Why wouldn't you can just keep pushing it and pushing it? You certainly can do that. I don't know if you can get a Vokey in a 9-iron loft, but yeah. So Michael says, I find that I can hit my 60-degree through 8-iron consistent with known distances. When I get to the 7-iron and 6-iron, I end up hitting the same as the 8-iron. I used to hit my 7-iron 150 to 160. Not so much. Can you help? Yeah, so I would just kind of look and see what's going on there. I'd look at your contact. One thing to keep in mind is that as the clubs get longer, as the lofts get less, they get progressively more difficult to hit. So it's pretty normal to be more inconsistent with the clubs as you go through your bag. Like typically you're going to hit your pitching wedge more consistently than your 3-wood, right? It's just kind of the nature of it. I don't know what your club head speed is like. If you are a lower club head speed player, as you go up through the bag, sometimes it can be harder to get the ball up in the air, so your distances may go down. So you may want to look at hybrids for those upper irons, because the way that a hybrid is built, it makes it to where it gets the ball up in the air more easily because it has more weight lower, which helps the ball launch up higher. So that could be part of it. It could be that you're just hitting your 7 and 6 iron just not solidly. And so that could be part of it. So there's lots of things to investigate there. And one other thing that I see is a lot of people, as they go up through the bag, they like to progressively move the ball position very far forward. And I just don't think that that's a good idea for most players. Play the same ball position with your 9-iron and with your 6-iron and with your 5-iron. For basically any shot that you hit off the turf, your ball position should be pretty much the same. Now, if you're trying to hit some sort of specialty shot, that's one thing. But if you're just trying to, hit a stock shot, your ball position is going to be very, very similar for 9-iron as it is for a 5-iron. So that's one thing I would look at. If you're pushing the ball position too far forward, well, a couple things that are going to happen. So one is you may tend to start hitting it thin because the bottom of your swing arc is happening more where the ball is instead of in front of the ball. So you may even be hitting the ground a little bit before the ball, and that's eating up some of the energy of the ball or of the club and not transferring it to the ball. So that could be part of it. And then also when the ball is more forward, the club's going to tend to release more, and there's going to be more loft added, right? So you could be basically turning in your 7-iron into an 8-iron when you move it forward and you don't hit it as solidly. So those would be some things that I would be looking at. All right, keep questions coming. We got, like I said, I'll stay on here for like another 20 minutes. I'm sorry we got started late today because the site was down, but We're live now, so if you got your questions, go ahead and put them in there. So Michael says, thanks. I do, in fact, move the ball forward, heading to the course now. Yeah, so I just play the same ball position and see if that helps. All right. So RC says, do you keep the same speed tempo for every club on full shots? I feel like I try to swing faster on longer shots and swing falls apart. Yeah, I would try to keep the same kind of rhythm and tempo with all of your swings. Larry K says, can you give an overview of the OnForm app, the key perspectives you use in looking at your swing? So really what I mean, if you're working on your swing on your own, what I would look at is the top speed golf system, and then and we tell you what to look for in there, right? So, and most of that's going to be seen from the face-on view. So we're going to be looking for spine angle, angled away from the target, right? 6 to 8 degrees. We're going to be looking for that staying roughly the same when we go up to the top, right? So overall angle of my body is going to be the same, 6 to 8 degrees angle away. And then we're going to be looking for that to be more angled away as we come into contact, somewhere in that 18 to 25 degree range, right? So that's stable fluid spine. That's what you're looking for there. Power turn, we're looking for getting a good turn, right? Getting a nice turn away, getting those shoulders to turn away from the target. We also may look for a wide takeaway. We talk about this in the power turn course, getting a nice wide takeaway, right? So getting that club about parallel to the ground when the hands are at about hip level, right? So if we're getting it parallel to the ground when the hands are still really low, we're probably just picking the club up, and we're not going to tend to get a full shoulder turn. So we want to get a full shoulder turn, at least 90 degrees, and then we want to get a full finish, right? We come all the way around. We get the hips pointing left of the target, shoulders pointing left of the target, or sorry, hips pointing toward the target, or even left of the target, shoulders left of the target, coming around into a nice full finish. So that's the power turn, the cliff notes there. Obviously, there's more detail there. If you go to the power turn course, it's in there. Then the next piece is lag, right? So getting that club to lag down as we're coming down, right? So we don't want to see this, right, as we're coming down. So as we're coming down, we want to see that angle between the lead arm and the shaft. We want to see that angle get tighter, right, as we're starting to come down. That's the top speed lag course. The next course is the compression line. This is the line that goes from my lead ankle, lead hip, lead shoulder at impact. I want that angle, or I want that line to be straight, right? I don't want my hip bumped way out like this. I want that line to be straight, and I want it to be just slightly angled away from the target, or with an iron, it can be vertical, but just slightly angled away from the target, like a degree or two. So that would look like this. So you would just draw a line on the app, see if you're in that area. What I find with a lot of amateurs is they're like this. They're too far angled away, leads to chunks and thins and things like that. So that would be the fourth piece of the top speed golf system. The last piece is the straight line release. So now we created that lag. Now we want to release that lag. We want to get that club releasing, and that's where the club is splitting the forearms here. We want to get that club releasing about 45 degrees out in front. The acceptable range is going to be somewhere between, I would say 28 to 55 degrees. That's where we see, that's the range where we see most tour players. So an example of someone who's at like 28 degrees would be like a Justin Rose, a Martin Keimer. An example of a player that's like at 55 would be like a Dustin Johnson, right? So somewhere in that area is where the release is going to be. So you'd be checking this on the app when you're working through the tests. And then the last piece would be the shallowing, right? So we talk about the shallowing line, the elbow plane line. So that would be taken from down the line. Now, the biggest importance with this is the camera angle from down the line. It has to be correct in order to be getting accurate information. If the camera angle is not correct, then it's just going to tell you something that's going to be wrong, right? Because perspective matters. When you're looking at something that's in 3D, right, and you're looking at it in 2D on the video, the perspective really makes a difference, right? So, for example, let's say if I put my line stick down here, let's say I lined up the camera with the ball, right? Well, if I do that, and then I get this club coming down, and it may look like it's working perfectly underneath the elbow plane line, which I'll show you here in a minute. But if I actually go to the correct angle, look at my club. My club is above the elbow plane line. Now I'm steep, right? So you may think that you're coming down shallow if you're looking at it from the wrong camera angle. The overwhelming, if I didn't give anybody any pointers on how to set up the camera, every single golfer would set that camera up right down the ball. Every single one of them. And a lot of times they do, even though we say put it down the toe line. So that's why I emphasize this, because it's very easy for a lot of people just to set up the camera down the ball line, when that's going to give you the wrong information. That's going to make it look like you're shallow when you're actually steep, right? So, or it's going to make you look like you're less steep than what you actually are, right? So it's really, really important to set up the correct camera angle from down the line. So the easy way to do that, use a club, an alignment stick, place it on the ground, point it at a target on the distance, take your camera, and then get it to where if there's a laser, if you imagine a laser coming out of the camera, it's going straight down the stick, right? So straight down that stick, you want it to be at about hip level, right? And then you want it to be far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame, right? So this is too close. Even this is too close, because when I go up to the top, the club goes out of the frame, right? So, and also this is too high. So you want to make sure that you're down the stick, hip level, and far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame. And I would just pace it off, so that way you can set it up the same way every single time, all right? Then when you go to hit the ball, this is the next piece, because this, people may set this up correctly, but then when they go to hit the ball, right, they'll go like this. Well, now that camera is shooting down this way. It's still not down the toe line. So it's not as bad as the ball line, but it's still not correct, right? So we want to make sure that we get our toes up here pretty close to this. I would say within an inch or two of it would be sufficient, right? If you're like this, and you want your toes to be equidistant, so you don't want to be like this or like this, right? You want the toes to be equidistant from it and within a couple inches of it. So this is kind of the camera angle that you would want. Now that's going to give us the correct way to look at it. So now that we got the camera angle set up and we're set up to this ball correctly, what we would do is we would draw a line from the hosel of the club up through the elbow. Hosel of the club up through the elbow. You can also do, I think they're talking about doing it to make it a little bit, I've always done it hosel of the club through the point of the elbow, but you can also do through the middle of the ball, through like the middle of the elbow. So right through the middle of the elbow joint, that's going to give you a very, very similar line, right? And what we would want to see is we want to see that club kind of tracking underneath that line as early as we can and staying underneath it all the way down, just slightly underneath it. It doesn't need to be. So if you imagine, let's say that this is the elbow plane line, that club would be tracking down like this, right? If that club tracks down like this, right, or let's say it's like this, right? That's steep. If it's like this, that steep, sometimes you may get it underneath and then it goes like this, right? That's steep. We want to get it underneath it very quickly, right? And then we want it tracking just underneath it all the way down, just underneath. So it would kind of be like that. For a driver, we would actually want it to be a little bit more. So for the driver, it would be like this. The driver would be kind of tracking down about a club head width underneath. That would be ideal. And the reason for that is because the ball position is more forward with the driver, we want to have the club shallowing out a little bit more because the club wants to kind of turn to the left as it's coming through. So if we have it kind of coming down in the same place as an iron, the club path is going to be working to the left a little bit as it's coming through contact. Now, if you want to hit fades, that's fine. But if you want to hit more powerful, straighter, more powerful kind of straight shots, I'd recommend getting it about a club head width underneath. Now, if you're more than that, if you're so let's say, again, this is the elbow plane line. And let's say that driver is working down like this. It's way underneath. Your path is going to be too much from the inside. You're going to you can over shallow out the club. So you either need to try to rotate more to get that club getting, not so far underneath, or you need to get your hands and your arms and the club head more out in front of you, so it's not shallowing so much. Not a very common problem, but it does happen sometimes. That typically when I see that happening, that's usually from coming out of the posture, right? So it's usually when people go like this and that club gets way underneath. So you probably, if you just stayed in your posture better, you'd probably do that better. But those would be the things that I'd be kind of the few basics of the things that I'd be looking at when using the ON format. All right, so let's keep going here. So Bob G says, best drill to eliminate turning shoulders with the body causing pulls to the left. So I'd recommend the 20-minute shallowing fix. That's what I'd recommend. 20-minute shallowing fix. Work through the 20-minute shallowing fix because that's going to get you to get the club face closed. A lot of times you do that as a reaction to the club face being open, and you're trying to get the club face more closed. So doing this is a reaction to doing that. So if you got the club face more closed, it would help you to get that to be working a little bit better. So that would be one thing I would look at. The other thing I would look at is your spine angle. If our spine angle is like this, and then we get up to the top and we're like this, we're going to tend to go over the top. So make sure that your spine angle, you're angled away. We get up to the top, we're angled away. That's going to help you to get into a better position. So that's why I'd be looking at a stable fluid spine. And then I'd be looking at the 20-minute shallowing fix. And those would be the drills that I'd be working through to get that to be working a lot better. So to get to the drills, you can click the instruction tab, then click the Tassovigel system. You can access both the stable fluid spine and the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. So BJ says, Q, I received an email from Clay about Hank Henny's launch deck. Have you been able to try this out? Me personally, no, I haven't. But Clay has, and he seems to like it. Makes sense. It's there's an old drill where you kind of like put a water bottle, like an empty water bottle in front of your ball to promote more of an upward angle of attack. Somebody just took that old drill and basically made it into a training aid. But I like, what I like about it is you can kind of adjust it for how much you want to hit up on it. So you can move the tee closer to it if you want to hit more up on it, right? If you want to get some feedback with that. And then you can move it farther away from it if you want to come in more level. So if you're someone who's chopping down on it, you can kind of scale it. You can work on just kind of coming in more level because it may be just too difficult to get it to be too much up. And then you can progressively kind of work it more forward. So it's giving you feedback like, okay, I'm this far up, I'm this far up, I'm hitting this much up. And then it also has the little arms on it to help you to swing more from the inside. So if you're someone who's coming down steeply, right, if you come down steep with the driver, you're going to tend to hit down on the ball. So it's got the little things on there to give you some feedback. So I like it. I haven't used it, but I do like it. I like the concept of it. I know Clay's played around with it, and he made a video with it. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you're someone who struggles with coming down steep with the driver and hitting down on the driver, because I think it can help. So Paul C says the only way I can square the club face is by early releasing. If I try to get the hands forward, I will hit a shank or a bad shot. Yeah, so that's because you're pushing your hands forward, right? So when you push your hands forward, you're pushing the hosel of the club. So you can't get shaft lean by doing this, right? That's not a way to get shaft lean. That's not how the best players do it. And if you do that, you're going to typically shank it because you're just pushing your hands out away from you, right? So you have to you have to have your body incentivized to be able to rotate through, because if you're not incentivized to rotate through, then you won't do it, right? So what I mean by that is we got to get that club shallowing, and we have to get that club face more closed, because that's going to put you in a position to not have to release the club out front. Because if I have this, or to have to release the club early, if I have this club face really closed and then I come in and I flip it, well, the club face is just going to be even more closed. So I'm incentivized to get to rotate my body and get my hands in front, right? If I'm coming down steep and I really rotate and get my hands in front, I'm just going to come down steeper. So I need to get this club shallowing so that way I can rotate my body and be incentivized to get my hands in front. So you got to incentivize yourself to do it. So I would work through the 20-minute shallowing fix to help you with this, because that goes through getting the club face more closed. That goes through getting the club more shallow, right? And you got to be incentivized to do that. Now, once you're incentivized to do that, you may still do the same thing with your body. If you get the club shallowing out and you get the face closed, you may still kind of flip your hands and then hit snap hooks to the left. And that's 100% fine. Now you're incentivized. Now you can work on drills to get the hands in front. But if you're hitting straight shots, right, and you're releasing your hands early to do that, well, you're not going to have any incentive to do something different, because it's going to lead to bad shots. So you need to get the club shallowing, get the face closed, and you may just start intuitively getting the hands more in front to start hitting better shots. But now if we get the club shallow and get the face closed and we start hitting bad shots, now we're actually incentivized to get the hands in front. And now I'd be working on drills to get the hands more in front, which would be rotating the body, doing the stick drill. One drill I really like is the stick drill. Whoops. So that's where we take an alignment stick, we put it down the shaft like this, right? And now just start out with some shorter, slower swings and just hitting some shots where you don't let this stick touch you, right? And when you do that, that's going to help you to train your body to move the correct way, right? So if you're someone who early releases, basically what's happening is you're throwing your arms in front of your body too much as you come into the ball, and then you're throwing the club head in front of your hands too much as you come into the ball, right? So there's not a lot of body happening, right? That kind of looks like this, right? When we look at people that have shaft lean, right, there's less of this and there's more of this. Well, this is happening, but it's not happening until out here, because there's more of this happening, right? There's more body rotation. There's more of that, right? So that's what we want to do to get that. So that stick drill gives you feedback right away. If I take this alignment stick, right, and I put this down the shaft, it gives me feedback right away. If I do that same thing, that thing's going to whack me in the side. So I have to start hitting some shots doing that. So what I would do is I would start out with shorter, slower swings. Now you can certainly try to do it at full speed, but most likely you're going to get very frustrated very quickly, because you're going to find that you most likely just cannot do it. So what you need to do is start out with some shorter, slower swings. Basically start out just kind of hitting chip shots, right? We're just going to bring it here and going like that, just kind of keeping this stick from touching you, right? So that, and we want to get the sensation of is that we're hitting the ball kind of with the side of our body, right? Right now, if you early release the club, you're throwing your arms in front of your body. We need the arms to be on the side of the body as we're coming in. So this kind of trains you to do that, right? To feel it on the side of your body, right? And then you can bring it up to more like, once you get to where you can do that, then you can do like 3/4 swings, getting the same feeling. Get to where you can do that, then you work up to fuller swings. So that's kind of the progression that I'd work through to get that in a better spot. All right. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Afternoon right now. So thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.